Hello, everyone. My name is Takita May. I'm going to go ahead and respond to our discussion board assignment. Number one, the first question asked about describing how the clinical mental health specialty came about and uh, CACREP's involvement. Clinical mental health was known as a conjunction between community counseling and mental health counseling, which dates back to about the early 1900s. Counseling, of course, has not always been noticed as what it is today. Counseling in the previous years was defined by sharing of advice or information. Some people were unaware of the evolution. Um, they may not realize that counseling profession has always stressed the growth and focus on the people in many different stages of life, and that comes from our Gladding and Newsom texts. Many different pioneers in the counseling field have reformed the clinical mental health counseling. It was interesting to see how the community counseling and the mental health counseling has so many similarities with that of the clinical mental health counselors. So it kind of made sense to me that they would merge the two into a professional counseling identity. In 1981, the Council for Accreditation of Counseling and Related Educational Programs, also known as CACREP, was formed as an affiliate organization of APGA, which is also from our Gladding and Newsom text. By including clinical mental health counseling in the CACREP program, it strengthens that particular specialty within the profession. I also found it interesting to see how the profession of clinical mental health has evolved over time. I never knew that it was two distinct fields that were joined as one, as I mentioned earlier, between the community and the mental health. But as I read the chapters in our text, it kind of again made sense that they would combine it for it to just be one. With so many pioneers leading the way with clinical mental health counseling, it is essential that counseling have a holistic approach and also use best practices, which is what's being used with the clinical mental health program. Question number two asks us to listen to the podcast also that talked about the profession, learning about the history of the profession. And it was a very, very interesting podcast. And immediately after, well, as I was listening to it, I just kind of felt like it took a long time for things to evolve, and it also showed in the text, from the 1900s even up until the 2000s, how things had changed within the profession. While listening to the podcast, I was able to confirm the creation of the American Mental Health Counseling Association. As with any new organization, there has to be an agreement between the founders and the people that are involved with the establishment. It was stated in the podcast that he needed about 200 signatures in order to form the organization. I think that he had a lot of support, especially from his wife, who kind of served as the head of the organization until he took over after she kind of got upset with some things that didn't go correct. It talked about the academy and how there were over 15,000 applicants for the association. So I thought that was, after everything had gone through, I think that was a kind of a great step into the right direction. And just thinking about, he mentioned Florida in the podcast, and thinking about how different states have different standards for their program. But I think most of the programs that I've kind of looked into, they do require 60 hours for their counseling students. And of course 3,000 postgraduate hours, which they also said that that's more than any profession in Florida, which I kind of thought that was pretty odd but interesting. Um, what I also found to be interesting was that in the podcast, he stated that a licensed psychologist is kind of the equivalent of a licensed counselor. So they're kind of doing the same type of work. Um, Out of the about 200 accredited programs, only 47 of the programs are clinical mental health, which is kind of on the low side. I guess not many students or individuals are interested in going that route, um, but uh, I think that it's a wonderful field to actually be in or be interested in becoming or joining. I think that this division, again, having its distinct counselors who work with the mentally ill clients, and also gives it a professional identity. It sets it apart from, school counselors or student affairs and career counselors. Being a clinical mental health counselor kind of specifies you to work with, a certain group of individuals. And again, like I said, and the book stated, it gives a professional identity. Question number 3 asks about uh, the social problems and using resources in the community. One of the social problems that I think that I would probably be interested in developing an educational program is about abused and neglected children. There are many individuals and students, particularly going through middle, elementary, middle, and high school, who are victims of abuse and neglect. Um, and most of the time, or a lot of the times, it's not reported. Although there aren't always visible signs of abuse and neglect, counselors, teachers, and social workers are all trained, of course, to look for different signs within these individuals. I think that the communities and parents could also benefit from being educated about the different signs of abuse in their children and ways in which they can be helped if someone they know um, are a victim, or if their families are victims themselves. Um, I'm looking forward to learning more about the clinical mental health program. As this is one of my tracks, I haven't got that much experience in working with this type of population, but I look forward to learning a lot more about the profession. Hope everyone had a good weekend, and see you guys